Cody, obviously the Broncos draft this Thursday. The NFL draft kicks off. The Broncos pick 20th. And that there is obviously the pre-draft buzz, as you will call it. People start asking around with GMs and all that sort of stuff, trying to get some of the behind-the-scenes talk, is that the Denver Broncos are at least game to trade up. Now, this is not a shock because how about this? In the last 17 drafts, great work by Yahoo Sports, Frank Schwab, to put this all together. You know, we both know Frank, colleague, great guy out there at Yahoo. In the last 17 NFL drafts in which Sean Payton has been a part of, he has traded up 25 times, more than once every single draft. He's only traded down 5 times in that span. And the funny thing is, each of those 5 trades down never returned another draft pick. All of the trades down were for another veteran player. This is a guy that loves to identify the players he wants, and he goes and gets them.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical Sean for you. And I think so much is contingent upon how the board falls. You know, like a lot of people have been talking about, you know, the Broncos like Ashton Jeanty. And I try to tell folks, like, that's a massive jump. Like,
I mean, of course,
to do that, they would have to jump to maybe 5th overall because the Raiders are, you know, all the buzz there seems to be that the Raiders are looking at taking him as 6th overall. So, yeah, I try to get people to, you know, dream big, but don't dream unrealistic, right?
But Cody, at the same time, if you use, it depends on whose draft chart you're using, and every team uses their own, but you take some. Basically, the idea would probably take the Broncos first next. You'd go and move up. It would take the Broncos first round next year and probably a third next year to go from 20 to 5. And it might even take a little more than that.
Yeah.
But historically, Sean Payton has shown that if for where he really believes that Ashton Jeanty is the guy, if he believes that Ashton Jeanty is going to be the next Saquon Barkley kind of player, Bijan Robinson, the kind of top to 5 guy, he will do it if he believes that's the guy.
Yeah, no, he will. But I also think that Sean is looking at this running back class and sure, I'm sure Ashton Jeanty's probably the top running back in a lot of people's eyes here. But, you know, I think that, you know, you look at Omarion Hampton, you look at TreVeyon Henderson. I think TreVeyon Henderson actually has a chance to be kind of that name that goes in round 1 that not many people are talking about. You know, a few weeks ago, we would have said like, TreVeyon Henderson round 2. I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos go with TreVeyon, you know, with the 20th overall pick. Everything has to make sense, though. Like, that's the thing. Like, how the Broncos maneuver, if there's a guy that they really like and he's within range of them to be able to trade up, I think that they will do it. Who that player may be, I'm not quite sure, right? The names I can think of right now have to be, you know, if Ashton Jeanty's there, not really talking about him, but if Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, if those guys are there within range and they're higher rated on their board, I could see them making a move there. Personally, Sean, I don't think the Broncos are going to move. I think they're going to stay put at 20th. You know, last week we had a chance to catch up with George and Sean for the pre-draft press conference, and they said they basically gave the analysis that, you know, we believe at the 20th pick, we believe we can get a player at the, you know, who's got the same value as 10th overall at 20th, because this really is a draft where the Broncos don't necessarily have to go out there and draft a starter. Get a really good player, get a guy who can rotate in for you right away, you know, as a rookie, whether it be offense or whether it be defense. I know D-line's in strong consideration for them as well. Harmon out of Oregon's a name to keep an eye on. But I think that they're going to stay put at 20, let the board fall to them. I think they're going to get a really good player at 20th overall. And then I think the rest of it is just adding really good depth pieces to what they want to do. Now, I also wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos They make a move in round number 1, but then they want to trade up to get a little bit closer in round number 2 to maybe get a guy. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case, but this is a draft about building out your depth and obviously your talent, because your roster for the most part is intact here.
Yeah, the one thing I guess I'd push back on respectfully when you talk about they don't need to draft a starter. I think they do at running back. I think they do. Now, Evan Ingram obviously was signed to start at tight end, but I personally like Audric Estime. I know you think that
they're high on him still.
Real chance, but you know, I still do wonder a little bit about the benching in Buffalo.
That had more to do with Javonte than anything with Estime.
Maybe so, but a first-round draft pick with a running back, I think indicates this is a guy that you plug and play and you start him. Now, he's also a running back by committee guy. We know that when Sean Payton's offenses have been at their best, he has a couple guys. You know, you have an Alvin Kamara, a Mark Ingram, you got Pierre Thomas and a Reggie Bush. You can go back throughout Payton's history and you usually see a couple of running backs. Do you think there's a possibility when you're talking about the running back position that he goes back to the well, because it looks pretty deep, and maybe in the 6th round, you grab another one too?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. double dip. I just know right now when you already have 4 running backs on your on your roster as it is, and there's going to be a lot of different mouths to feed during training camp and OTAs. It's just hard to imagine him double dipping right now, unless their plan is like, hey, we're going to take 2. We're moving on from one of the guys that we already have on our roster. And, it could be, like I said, they like Blake Watson. I mean, he was an undrafted rookie free agent that Sean liked. He had some Joker traits to him, especially as a receiver. When he was first picked up and signed as an undrafted rookie free agent, Sean Payton said the one thing he wants to do is throw him the ball. Well, we got to see a little bit of him in the regular season against the Chargers towards the end of the last year. And then on top of that, he's got the ability to be another returner alongside Marvin Mims. So, they brought him up to the active roster because a lot of other teams were poking around trying to steal him away. So it's clear that they value Blake Watson. I think if we're looking at anyone who could be the odd man out, it could be Tyler Bidet, which isn't, a performance-related thing. Obviously, you got the elevation for the playoff game, but Bidet could be in a situation where he sees that they take, 2 running backs in this year's draft and says, you know what, I don't know what I have to do to prove myself because, look, I thought he earned a 53-man roster spot in the preseason last year and in training camp. He was easily the most impressive running back the Broncos had on a daily basis in the summer last year. But then obviously he suffered that scary injury in week 4. He may just look for a new start elsewhere if the Broncos do in fact go with 2 backs, but they got 4 right now. I mean, I could see them adding 2 in the draft. If anything, I see them adding 1 in the draft, 1 as an undrafted rookie free agent, and then going from there.
The idea of running back too that fascinates me, that I think TreVeyon Henderson's a big part of the equation here, is pass protection. We know that that's immensely important. We know that part of the reason Javonte Williams, despite not being able to really get anything done on the ground, you can look at the regular stats, the advanced metrics, all of it really had an ugly story for Javonte Williams when he was carrying the football last year. But he earned those snaps because you could trust him in pass protection. TreVeyon Henderson is known as a really good, really aggressive pass protector. He goes and sticks his head into guys. He's not out there just to chip and to get out of the way. He's looking to block guys. And I think to Sean Payton, given the fact that he has some ability to catch the football, there's pass protection skills. We know that he's got burst. The Jahmyr Gibbs comparisons are a little unfair. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's not as fast as Jahmyr.
Right. He's not Gibbs. But
he's a little bigger.
Has the ability to pass protect, and I think for Henderson, that's a big advantage for him. And like Bo Nix last year, where a lot of people looked across the league and said, Bo Nix, really, we have a second round grade on Bo Nix for whatever that means. We know in the NFL draft that fit is what matters. Where you get selected when you're talking to the team is more important than the slot in which you get selected. And I think when you look at a guy like TreVeyon Henderson, and I look at the Denver Broncos, especially if they do believe in Estime, who's a bulldozer guy that had a hilarious collection of touchdowns at Notre Dame, I do look at the idea of Estime and Henderson, especially from pass protection, and think, hey, I get why Sean Payton could look at that and say, if I had Henderson there, if I had Estime there, and I still have Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Bidet and Blake Watson in some format, we can kind of do just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you flexibility at the position, and more so, I think it establishes the roles and obviously the pecking order, I think, very clearly. That was something that was not established for the Broncos last season. It was 1 week it was Javonte and then Jaleel, and then 1 week it was Jaleel and Audric and Jaleel, and then it switched up to Javonte and Tyler Bidet in the playoff game. And so there was never really a clear pecking order at the running back position. Sean had a sense of loyalty to Javonte through a good portion of last year. Obviously knowing what Javonte's been through. Javonte's a hard worker, great teammate, great locker room presence. And so even though the production wasn't there, he was trustworthy in a sense. And we know that Sean has an affinity for guys that he trusts. And sometimes that can be a good thing. It can be a little bit of a bad thing. But, I understand it from a coaching standpoint. But, if let's say they get a guy like TreVeyon Henderson, you do get, you 3 down back there with Audric Estime, who they believe, like internally, the team would like Audric to become that guy. He's going to obviously have to earn that here. But TreVeyon comes in and he gives you pass protection. Audric gives you pass protection. TreVeyon gives you an element out of the backfield. Audric possibly can, but he's going to be a downhill runner. He's going to be short yardage situations, whereas TreVeyon, he could do everything. He can be that pass catcher. He can be the pass pro and also that runner. I had a chance to watch John Gruden's quarterback class. It's, from Barstool. It's on their YouTube page, on Will Howard. And, Will Howard, talking about his operation over there at Ohio State, you see a lot of highlights. You see a lot of good pickups and plays there from TreVeyon Henderson. And so for me, I'm all in on the TreVeyon Henderson train here. I would also like, the Broncos to get Emeka Egbuka, but I'm not sure what the draft order is going to be like and if that's going to be a realistic scenario for them. But man, I would love to get those two guys here, for the Broncos. If I were them, if I were the GM, I'd find a way to make it happen. But this is a draft where, look, the Broncos are going to get a really good player in the first round, and then the rest of I think they're going to get some good players with their other picks. But this is more so, I think they're going to fill out their depth with a lot of their draft picks this year. And then they're going to have options to evaluate for a whole season. And then they'll go into free agency next year with more financial flexibility to make upgrades if need be, and also take care of guys with extensions. So, I mean, Denver's in a good position right now. It's crazy to think about where they were 2 years ago, Sean, to where they are today. Completely different outlook, completely different situation, and a lot of room to breathe, which is a good thing here as they prepare for, Peyton and Peyton's third year together.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own opinions, but Pro Football Focus today put out a pre-draft sort of power rankings across the league. They had the Broncos ninth in the NFL, ninth. This is before the draft right now where you don't even know who the starting running back is. So it gives you an idea of how they're being perceived. We also look at the tight end spot. We know that Evan Ingram was signed, but, the guys like Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, there's other options there. We expect them to add there at some point. But that last one on the screen, defensive line. That's the one spot everyone's looking at running backs or wide receivers or tight ends. It is not impossible in a year that it looks pretty good for defensive linemen, and especially in the middle, with the Broncos having a couple of their guys coming up for new extensions, needing that maybe we could be looking in the wrong place, and the Broncos could go defensive line at 20 if they like it, or maybe let's move back a couple steps, pick up a pick, and do it then.
Yeah, I mean, they like the defensive line depth here. They were very open about that last week when they talked to us in Thursday's pre-draft press conference. I wouldn't be shocked. For me, I think it would more so have something to do with John Franklin Myers than would have anything to do with Zach Allen, or DJ Jones or Malcolm Roach. I think it's more so, hey, we may not be able to afford to pay John Franklin Myers what he wants. We need to get a guy who's going to come in for a year, learn behind him, learn the defensive scheme under, Jamar Cain to be able to play inside, outside. That level of versatility is something that matters to them. And then they may even find a way. It's like, all right, hey, we're going to play you right away. But the idea is that next year you be the starter. Denver moves on from JFM, which I would love for them to find a way to pay JFM, but it's going to be hard when you have to pay Zach Allen. You have to pay Nick Benito. So when you're talking about having to pay three guys at the defensive line, I mean, that's a tough price tag to be able to fit the bill. I mean, the Broncos defense is already, financially stacked right now as is. So now with Benito coming up, Zach Allen, these two guys are guaranteed to get extensions at some point here, when to be determined. It kind of leaves John Franklin Myers as the odd man out there, which is why I think the Broncos would, if they took a defensive lineman at the 20th pick, I could see that being the reason as to why.
And of course, Cortland Sutton, the extension that will be forthcoming. Everyone assumes it's a fait accompli. It will be done, but it's not done yet. So You don't know what the financial situation looks like. Cody, as we talked about it, we started the segment, 25 times in the last 17 drafts, Sean Payton has traded up for a pick. He's never in those 17 drafts traded down for a pick. Presumably, you think at some point in this draft, they're trading up again for somebody.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we saw it in Sean's first year. Look, the Broncos didn't have a first or a second rounder. They traded up into the back end of round number 2 to grab Marvin Mims. They had a third round pick there that they took Drew Sanders with, and then they traded back up into round 3 to get Riley Moss. So, I mean, I think at some point, I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos try to trade back into the top 100 to at least get 4 picks in the top 100. If I had to give a bold prediction here today, I think that's kind of going to be the sweet spot here. And look, we'll find out. How it goes, what the plan is. But, I think that this draft that's coming up, it's going to tell us a lot about maybe how the Broncos view their current roster, but also how they view some of their backup guys, some of the younger developing guys here, because this is a team that's in a position right now. Their foundation of this team is set, but now it's about how do you strengthen that? How do you add pieces offensively and defensively? You're going to make things better for everyone on the team. I mean, with the moves that they made in free agency combined with, what's coming up here in the draft, what positions they really choose to emphasize, I think is going to tell us a lot.
Well, you want to follow Cody for all of the latest as the draft gets going on Thursday. The Broncos projected, at least at this point, to pick 20. That's where they're set up. We'll find out what they do as the week goes along. But you want to follow Cody for all the latest. Check out all the work on My Life Sports, all the film rooms there, by the way, on the YouTube channel as well. And check them out on the Locked On Broncos podcast. Cody, I know it's a big week for you. Thanks for carving out some time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. As always, expect the unexpected.